Has the package arrived? Starting today, my parents will be living with us, so please take care of them. He must be joking. Those were the first words I heard from him in a while. Then I felt nothing but anger towards him. He is too self-centered. That's the situation, so I'm counting on you. I could see right through his intentions. He wants to bring his parents over to restrict me, while he benefits from various conveniences. I was filled with indignation, but I immediately sneered. Yes, I just happened to have vacated the house. Ha! Philip's deflated reaction made it hard for me to hold back my laughter. It seems he had forgotten who owned that house. Ben, who was listening nearby, was also struggling to hold back his laughter. After all, this house originally belonged to my grandparents, and it's registered in my name, isn't it? Ah! And who gave you permission to invite your parents to move in together? I absolutely hate the idea of letting them into my house. A mother-in-law who enjoys tormenting her daughter-in-law, and a father-in-law who likes to fuss over his grandson. Do you think I don't know anything? I'll make sure you pay the price. I am Nancy Park. I am 32 years old, currently on parental leave. I live with my husband, Philip, and our 1-year-old son, Victor. Victor has just started walking recently and can't be left alone. Still, the way he toddlers about and calls me mama in his tiny voice is incredibly soothing. Victor really loves his mom, doesn't he? I met Philip at work, where we got to know each other. My family has been running a bakery for generations. Every day, I bake delicious bread and deliver smiles to our customers along with my parents and younger brother. Excuse me, could I have your name and contact information? One day, Philip, a regular customer at our shop, approached me with that request. His face turned bright red, which I found endearing, and we started dating. Your cooking is delicious, Nancy. Really? I'm so happy to hear that. Yeah, so I want you to keep making it for me, by my side. After that, we got married. My parents were genuinely happy about our marriage. My much younger brother, Ben, seemed a bit troubled, but he didn't oppose it, and I believed he was happy for us. Ben has said he will take over the shop, so why don't you all move into Grandpa's house? Following my father's suggestion, the 3 of us moved into the house that once belonged to my deceased grandparents. We planned to watch Victor grow up together in this house. One day, I went shopping with Victor. Victor held my hand and walked as hard as he could with his little feet. Oh, Victor. He's come with me. Let's say hi to Grandma. Hi, Victor. While buying bread at my parents' shop, both my parents and the regular customers greeted Victor with smiles. Victor was all smiles, not shy at all. Our house is about an hour's drive from my parents' bakery, and we visit about once a month. Then, when I happily returned home with Victor. Why? The front door wasn't locked. When I opened the door, familiar shoes were there. And as expected, a sigh escaped me. Please call ahead when you plan to come, mother-in-law. Ah, you're finally back? Where have you been? Ignoring my words, my mother-in-law lay down and watched TV. She probably used the spare key given by Philip to enter without permission. I sighed again at her, who never stops coming unannounced, no matter how many times I advise her to. Don't just stand there, get on with the chores. I'll look after Victor. Saying this, she picked up Victor and urged me to clean up the remnants of the snacks she had eaten. I want her to clean up after herself and not touch my son with her snack-covered hands. When I told her this, she complained, "I'm not dirty," and told Victor excessively, "Your mom is scary." isn't she? Please don't say strange things to Victor, mother-in-law. I argued back and took sleepy Victor to his room. I continued my chores while listening to my mother-in-law's sarcastic comments. Honestly, I don't want to bother with my mother-in-law, but if I don't watch her, she quickly tries to take Victor and leave. You're not fun to be around. I'm going home today. With those words, my mother-in-law headed home. I was relieved and smiled as I saw her off. Dealing with my mother-in-law is tough. I murmured and finished the chores I had paused midway. I understand that her love for Victor, her only grandchild, is strong. However, I really wish she would refrain from coming to our house nearly every day and using the spare key to enter without permission. Hey, it's about time we get the spare key back from your mother. Why? When Philip came home, I complained to him about his mother's behavior. Upon hearing my words, Philip showed a troubled expression. I frowned at his reaction. If you don't get the spare key back, I'll change the locks. And if it comes to that, I won't give you the new keys. Okay, I got it. I'll get the spare key back from Mom. That'll satisfy you, right? Faced with my firm demand, Philip finally promised me. I hoped this would improve the situation, but I ended up being disappointed. Can you come to my parents' house with me this weekend to get the spare key back? Philip asked me this. I didn't really want to go, but I thought it would be better to see the key being returned with my own eyes, so I decided to go to my in-laws' house with Victor. You finally came. There's a mountain of chores for you to do, so get moving. We'll take care of Victor. As soon as we entered my in-laws' house, Victor was taken away by his grandparents, and I was tasked with various chores around their house. I involuntarily looked at Philip, but he stubbornly avoided my gaze. I felt tricked. He set me up. Despite feeling this way, there was little I could do in a 3-against-1 situation. Wanting to avoid a long stay in the dusty and dirty in-laws' house, I decided to finish the chores quickly. While I was cleaning, suddenly I heard Victor's loud crying. Victor. What happened? Rushing over at the sound, I saw Victor crying and struggling in his grandfather's arms. Seeing him reaching out to me, I quickly took Victor from his grandfather. What did you do to Victor? You are noisy. We didn't do anything. That's right. As I glared, Philip, who was almost invisible like a shadow, explained the situation. It seems that Victor had tried to follow me and was caught by his grandfather, who forcibly held him, ignoring his desire to come to me. The grandfather wanted to play, which led to Victor being upset and crying intensely. After I rushed to him. Victor is such a crybaby for a boy. It's true. It's because he's raised by a bad mother. Perhaps we should take him to our house. I cannot leave Victor here. Excuse us. I held Victor tightly and quickly left my in-laws' house. I shouldn't have taken Philip's word for it. I'm sorry, Victor. We went back home, and I laid the tired and crying Victor down on his bed. After that, I called my mother to tell her what had happened and vented my frustrations. During that time, there was no contact from Philip, who had stayed at his parents' house. About an hour later, the doorbell rang at our home. Hey sis, can we talk for a bit? Ben? What's up? Mom said I should come over. I've brought some souvenirs. Ben was there, holding bread he had brought from our family home. He mentioned that I looked tired and helped with the household chores. He took care of Victor, who had woken up, without any hassle. Thanks to Ben, both Victor's and my mood improved. You're really a lifesaver, Ben. Well, we're family, after all. Also, Mom sent a message you can come back home anytime. Hearing this, I felt reassured to have such dependable family support. Philip returned several hours after Ben had left, apparently after having dinner at his parents' house. This time, both Victor and I were really hurt. "I'm really sorry, but my parents didn't mean any harm." You saw Victor crying. When I got angry, Philip pretended to be remorseful. However, I couldn't truly believe he was repentant, and I found it hard to trust him anymore. At that moment, the option of divorce crossed my mind. "Philip, get up quickly." Philip. When I woke up in the morning, Philip was nowhere to be found. Instead, there was a letter left behind. "I'm on a business trip to Los Angeles starting today. You could have told me that in person. Well, it's less stressful without him around, and perhaps it's best for both of us to have some distance right now. If he's not here, there's no problem changing the locks. This way we'll be safe for a while, Victor." Victor might not understand the words yet, but he smiled back at me when he saw me smiling. I felt that with Victor here, I would be fine even without Philip. From then on, we began living separately temporarily. Philip was busy with a long business trip, making it difficult for him to come home. I really miss not being able to see Victor, and I miss the meals you make, Nancy. Having some distance seemed to help mend our relationship, and we shared updates about our lives through weekly video calls. Meanwhile, there had been no contact from my mother-in-law. I thought she might at least ring the intercom since the locks were changed, but there was absolutely no contact. Thanks to that, we were enjoying peaceful days, but deep down I felt it was calm before the storm. It's a big crisis. That was when I suddenly received a call from Ben. Listening to my frantic brother, Philip's secrets were revealed. That idiot. I can never forgive him. I was outraged and began preparing for revenge. With information from Ben and support from our parents, we successfully completed the plan 2 days later. Just as Ben and I were about to leave the house with Victor, something happened. "I've brought a package for you." "Eh?" "Oh, okay. Please leave it here for now." A lot of packages had been delivered to the house. When I saw the name on the packages, it was my in-laws. I immediately called Philip. "Did the packages arrive? From today, my parents will be living with us, so please take care of them." He must be joking. Those were the first words I heard from him in a while. Then, I felt nothing but anger towards him. He is too self-centered. That's the situation, so I'm counting on you. I could see right through his intentions. He wants to bring his parents over to restrict me, while he benefits from various conveniences. I was filled with indignation, but I immediately sneered. "Yes, I just happened to have vacated the house." Philip's deflated reaction made it hard to hold back my laughter. It seems he had forgotten who owned that house. Ben, who was listening nearby, was also struggling to hold back his laughter. After all, this house originally belonged to my grandparents, and it's registered in my name, isn't it? "Ah. And who gave you permission to invite your parents to move in together?" I absolutely hate the idea of letting them into my house. A mother-in-law who enjoys tormenting her daughter-in-law and a father-in-law who likes to fuss over his grandson. Do you think I don't know anything? I'll make sure you pay the price. I have no intention of living with a cheating husband. Wait, you said you vacated the house. That's right. I've already sold it. What? Why would you do something like that without telling me? My parents are supposed to come there this afternoon. It seemed that he was forcibly trying to move forward with living together with his parents without my consent. The reason my mother-in-law hadn't visited recently must have been because she was busy preparing to move. It must have been a struggle to clean up all the accumulated trash at her house. Still, that has nothing to do with me. You're not joking, are you? Isn't it the same joke for you? Your parents' belongings are at the front door. Goodbye. I hung up the phone. I immediately rejected the callback and blocked all his contacts. Sorry I'm late. It's okay. Shall we go? Without Ben's help, I wouldn't be where I am now. It was Ben who uncovered Philip's affair. When Ben went to a theme park in Los Angeles with his girlfriend, he spotted Philip walking intimately with an unfamiliar woman. I hadn't seen your husband since the wedding, but he was a regular at the shop, so I remembered him. He took a photo as evidence and informed me. After that, with the support of my parents back home, I immediately took action. Among the bakery's regular customers was a private investigator who helped gather more evidence. Through a lawyer recommended by this investigator, I proceeded with the disposal of the house. A friend of my father, who runs a real estate business, arranged for the house to be sold quickly. The house is renovated and the interior is beautiful. It's close to schools and a train station, so it was easy to find a buyer. As my father predicted, the house sold quickly. It was supposed to be handed over to the new owners today, but suddenly a large amount of luggage from my in-laws' house came. I'm home. Welcome back, Nancy, and Victor too. Both of you, welcome back. You must be tired. I felt truly relieved by my parents' warm welcome. I'm home. When I smiled, Victor also laughed out loud, and everyone around us started laughing too. Now it's time for revenge. Your mom is going to work hard, so please support me. Victor continued to show his adorable smile in response to my words. Ah, Nancy, are you working as a clerk today? Yes, I am. Please buy a lot. Afterward, I began working in the shop while taking care of Victor. The regular customers kindly greeted me. Working in the shop after a long time was a comfortable time for me. It was at that moment. Nancy. Philip and my in-laws appeared in the shop. I paused my work, handed Victor over to my mother, and faced them. Let's talk outside. I don't want to disturb the other customers here. The other customers don't matter. What do you think you're doing on your own? Oh, and cheating during a business trip isn't something done on one's own initiative. At my retort, the regular customers in the shop gave Philip cold stares. Feeling their gaze, Philip fell silent for a moment. We were supposed to live in that house, so why did you sell it? Where are we supposed to live now? Moreover, Philip says that Nancy is the one cheating. My in-laws exclaimed that angrily. I was dumbfounded by my father-in-law's words and blurted out, "Huh? Me? Cheating? That's absolutely not true. The only one I love is Victor. Why would you say something like that? There's no way I would cheat. That's a lie. Because we saw a young man leaving your house. That young man was. You mean my brother, Ben. Eh? Your brother. I've been telling you I have a much younger brother. As we were talking, Ben just happened to show up. Seeing him, even Philip looked surprised. Long time no see. Brother-in-law. Is he really your brother? So, you misunderstood that I was cheating, and you cheated as well. There actually was a business trip. However, the truth is he became close to a woman he met during the trip and deepened their relationship without coming home. And then you borrowed money for that woman. Eh? At my words, my in-laws then stared intently at Philip. Meanwhile, Philip turned pale and looked bewildered. "How did you find out?" "I investigated properly, unlike you. You had borrowed $20,000 as our joint account wasn't enough, right? When I checked the account after a long time, I was shocked to find hardly any money left. The living expenses had primarily been covered by my maternity benefits and salary before maternity leave. The money was safely kept in my personal account, untouched. We regularly saved in our joint account for Victor's future education fund. But this is going too far. Should we let someone else decide then?" Philip had plotted to live with his parents in the house inherited from my grandparents on my name while engaging in affairs and accumulating debt on business trips. Feeling outraged by his actions, I sold my house and moved back to my parents' home. Who do you think is in the wrong here? Hearing my words, the regular customers at the shop stared harshly at Philip and his parents. Noticing this, they were clearly disturbed. "Could you please leave the premises?" I said that with a smile, and they hurriedly left the shop. After successfully getting them out, the regular customers applauded, and I blushed with a shy smile. Later, I pursued a division of assets for Philip's infidelity, while my parents sought compensation for business disruption due to his and his parents' intrusion during the bakery's operating hours. Philip had no means to pay due to his debts, and his parents, who lived a disordered life, had hardly any assets. Thus, they ended up selling whatever they could to scrape together some money. "I'm really sorry. Please help me." Philip pleaded with me, clinging on. I sighed deeply and said to him, "Do you think I can believe your remorse?" "No, but this time it's really. I'm fed up. If you come any closer, I will call the police." At my cold response, Philip looked disappointed and slumped his shoulders. I continued to look at him with a cold gaze. "I fully understand why you wanted to live with your parents." At my words, Philip involuntarily shivered. Philip's parents had always complained that their house was too small and that they wanted someone to help with the chores. In essence, they wanted to use me as a substitute housemaid, enjoying a comfortable life in that house. Philip, on the other hand, couldn't usually stand up to me, and he thought if his parents were around, I'd be under their thumb. Additionally, he had been trying to find the passbook for my savings from before I was married. My assessment isn't wrong, is it? How do you know all this? Working in customer service, you learn to observe people. Besides, even though you approached me aggressively, I married you because I loved you. When you love someone, you pay close attention to them, and eventually you can almost read their thoughts. Hearing this, Philip looked down. Then he exploded in anger, shouting "damn it," and swung his hand at me. However, before his hand could reach me, someone stepped in to stop him. "You really shouldn't be doing that." Ben confronted Philip's fierce gaze. Ben had been practicing martial arts for some time and was quite solidly built. When Ben grabbed Philip's hand and glared at him, Philip quickly lost his spirit. "Never show your face in front of my sister again." As Ben yelled, Philip scurried away with a pitiful cry. "Thank you, Ben." "No problem. Just call me anytime you need help. I'll handle it." Ben's smile felt incredibly reassuring. "You used to always cry and hide behind me. Stop bringing up the past. I'm an adult now. I have things to protect." "That's true. Just don't become like him." As I said that, Ben replied with a laugh, "Of course not." I knew then that he would definitely protect the ones he cares about. "Both of you, come and help." "Yes, we're coming now." Called by my mother, We returned to the shop. After that, Philip became afraid of Ben and no longer showed his face. Then, through a lawyer, he was given the divorce papers, which he signed immediately. Thus, our divorce was finalized. Actually, after the incident, the regular customers were saying, "We can't forgive anyone who makes Nancy suffer." According to my mother, the story of what happened at the shop spread, and it eventually reached the company where Philip worked. It spread quickly within the company, and Philip lost his place there. Unable to bear the cold stares from his colleagues, he was forced to resign. "I'm sorry, please help." That was a call from my mother-in-law. I had completely forgotten to remove my in-laws' contact details amidst everything that was happening. Help. What do you mean? Of course I mean financial help. I'm sorry, but I'm not so kind as to help someone who has caused me trouble. With that, I hung up the phone. I immediately blocked the contact. Afterward, Philip was unable to prepare the division of assets and child support and resorted to borrowing money from dangerous lenders. I heard that his affair partner abandoned him soon after, having believed he was single. Rumors circulated that my in-laws were scrambling for money and eventually were taken away by a suspicious group, along with Philip. Mama. What's wrong, Victor? Meanwhile, we were living our days quietly. We took turns caring for Victor, enjoying a peaceful life. Standing in the shop, I felt loved by the regular customers and had a pleasant time. With Philip out of our lives changed for the brighter. Let's play together today, Victor. Responding to my call, Victor showed me an angelic smile. Afterward, our family grew. Ben's girlfriend came to our house and took a great liking to Victor. "I'm so happy to have this child as my nephew." She expressed her joy. With her, "I think we can build a wonderful family," Ben said with a smile. "If Ben chose her, she would be great for our family. Should anything arise, it will be my turn to support them." There has been no contact from Philip and his family, and our days continue to be peaceful. "Okay, Mommy is going to work now, so you stay with Grandma today." We plan to continue watching Victor grow, now as a family of 5, and live our days to the fullest. And today, I take another step forward, ready to bake delicious bread energetically. Years later, our family expanded even more. Ben and his girlfriend got married and had a child. Moreover, someone appeared who expressed a desire to live with me. "If anyone makes Mom cry, I'll protect you from them." Victor has grown up and started to say such things. We will continue to boost our bakery together and live happily.
My father passed away, and a year has passed since then. After the death of my father, my mother was also engulfed in deep sorrow, but recently, she has finally begun to smile again and her former vitality is returning. One day, as we were regaining our tranquility, my husband's unilateral action threw our household into chaos. "Your mother approved, so it should be fine," my husband said, but I countered, "How can you think there's no problem? This is our home. Why sacrifice our family to accommodate yours?" Unbeknownst to me, my husband had invited his parents, who were living with his brother and his wife, to our home. Moreover, my father's room, which had been left untouched, was tidied up without my consent. With my husband speaking his mind freely and his inconsiderate parents, our home became uncomfortable. Because of this situation, my mother began to go out more often. I cannot accept this situation under any circumstances. I must get my in-laws out of our house. This is a story about the crisis of my home being taken over by my husband and his family after my father's death. My name is Wendy. I am turning 40 this year. I married Greg when I was 28, and I have a medical condition that makes it difficult for me to work outside. Although I used to work full-time when I was younger, my intermittent health issues often caused inconvenience to others, so I later switched to working from home. However, my income is dependent on my health and is unstable every month. Thus, living alone was not a viable option for me. Before marriage, I lived with my working parents, helping with household chores while working. After marrying Greg, we started a new life in a rented apartment, saving money gradually with plans to eventually buy our own home. However, our situation changed when I heard that Greg's brother had built a two-generation house to live with his parents. My parents suggested that we live with my parents in their renovated family home. They were concerned about my unstable income and the difficulty of buying a house just for the two of us. While my parents' proposal was reassuring, living with his wife's family was not easy for Greg. With this in mind, I planned to respect Greg's wishes. But he was excited about the idea of my parents providing all the funds and readily accepted the suggested living arrangement. For about 10 years, the four of us lived relatively harmoniously. Despite my father's strictness, my cheerful husband was always considerate around him, and my parents tried not to interfere too much, allowing Greg to relax when not with the family. Despite my unstable income and physical inability to have children, my husband and I lived without major conflicts, supporting each other thanks to my parents' help. I am determined to repay this kindness. Out of gratitude, I acquired a qualification anticipating future caregiving needs. But my father passed away suddenly from a heart attack before I could use it. My mother couldn't accept the reality of this sudden event, lost her appetite, and was unstable for a while. During that time, I focused on supporting my mother, but Greg's behavior began to change. After the renovation was carried out 10 years ago, my family home changed from 2 stories to 3. The first floor had a bedroom and toilet exclusively for my parents, and the spare room became my father's office space. The second floor housed the kitchen, laundry space, and bathroom shared by the whole family, but the living space next to the kitchen was mainly used by my parents. The third floor was reserved for us, with a toilet and 2 rooms for our use, serving as a living area and bedroom. Normally, we spent our time on the 3rd floor, living our lives there. However, after my father's death, Greg started spending time on the 2nd floor for some reason. "Why are you watching TV here? This is my mom's area." Despite my repeated reminders, Greg retorted, "If your mother comes, I'll move. She's not here now, so it's fine to use it," and continued to occupy the space. He began to relax in the 2nd floor living room daily, occasionally drinking and falling asleep there. He said he would yield if my mother asked, but she became reticent and stopped coming to the 2nd floor when she knew Greg was there. No matter how much I talked to him, Greg wouldn't listen to me, and after my father's absence, he began to act selfishly, leading to frequent clashes between us. Our conversations dwindled, and then the worst happened. My father passed away, and a year has passed since then. Immediately after my father's death, my mother was also engulfed in deep sorrow, but recently, she has finally begun to smile again, and her former vitality is returning. Huh? What's with this luggage? However, one night, when my mother and I returned from shopping, the storeroom on the 1st floor was wide open, and all the belongings from my father's study had disappeared. In their place, an unfamiliar old chest of drawers and bed had been set up, and there were mountains of cardboard boxes. To investigate the reason behind these changes, I rushed to the living room on the 2nd floor, where not only Greg but also my mother-in-law were present, and my father-in-law was drinking with Greg. When I called Greg out to the hallway to ask him what was going on, he said, "My mom isn't getting along with my brother's wife, so I had no choice but to invite them here." I decided to let them use the storeroom. The response I got was more self-centered than usual. "Why didn't you tell me? We haven't been talking much lately, and if we did, it would just start a fight." He said that, justifying his lack of consultation because our relationship had cooled off. "Where are my dad's belongings? You didn't throw them away, did you?" "Yes, I threw them away. They were just in the way." Without a word to us, Greg had disposed of my father's items. I couldn't hide my anger at his actions, yelling loud enough for my in-laws and mother to hear. "Tell them to leave immediately." "Okay. Bring back everything you threw away." "All right." Despite my anger, Greg responded calmly, nodding but unlikely to take any action. Whenever a fight broke out, he would just say something to settle things. "Listen to me, please. Wendy." As I raised my voice in frustration, I heard a voice from behind. Turning around, I saw my mother coming up the stairs, quietly signaling with her finger to her lips and shaking her head. "It's late, let them stay tonight," she said, choosing to be considerate of my in-laws. Later, even when I tried to talk to Greg, he avoided the conversation, using his parents as an excuse. The next morning, while I was reminiscing about my father, Greg passed out drunk in the living room. The table was cluttered with dirty dishes, adding to my frustration. As I was about to start doing the laundry to avoid cleaning up, my mother-in-law threw some laundry at me, saying, "Wendy, can you take care of this too? Wendy, you are wonderful. Not only do you wash for your own family, but you also take care of your parents' laundry." "Amy only takes care of her own family," she complained, naturally expecting me to do the laundry and expressing dissatisfaction with Greg's brother's wife. "Does she really intend to live here? This is the house that my parents built." After my mother-in-law left, I tried to wake up Greg, who was sleeping in the living room, but he was groggy and wouldn't wake up. Eventually, I returned to the bedroom on the third floor and called Greg's brother. "Yeah, I've heard about it from Greg. You told me he informed you, but I was not aware of any of this. This is the Owen family house, so it's difficult for the Anderson family members to live here. Please come and take them back." Handing over the laundry, I felt a sense of urgency. If I didn't act quickly, they would end up staying longer. I requested they be picked up, but Greg's brother immediately replied, "I've told Greg as well, but it seems the relationship between Amy and our mother is beyond repair, and it looks like our mother doesn't want to live here either. I'm sorry, but you'll have to manage." "Wait, just a minute." Ignoring my words, he unilaterally pushed the responsibility onto me, cutting off the conversation. Both brothers were beyond my control. Despite my concerns, I headed back to the second floor where Greg was. "Mom." My mother was in the living room, tidying up the messy room even though she had just woken up. "I'll clean up here, so Mom, please go wash your face." I should have left it to Greg, but in the end, I had to handle it myself. While my mother was in the washroom, I was doing the dishes when I realized Greg had woken up and was opening the refrigerator behind me. I drained the water and immediately resumed the conversation. "Did you really get rid of Dad's belongings?" I asked, to which Greg replied, "How many times do I have to say it? Yes, I threw them away. Without consulting us. How can you do such a thing without involving us, the family?" I protested. "Because unused things are in the way," he said. "Is this really a difference of opinion? Or is it influenced by his relationship with his father-in-law?" My mother and I wanted to keep my father's belongings a bit longer, but Greg easily let go of them. It feels like no matter how much we talk, he won't understand. I had almost given up on expecting anything from Greg, but imagining my mother being sad again leaves me endlessly troubled. "I've advised you not to throw away other people's things without permission," but Greg remained indifferent and gave no response. "And I called your brother," I said, to which Greg turned around in surprise and asked, "Why?" I asked him to come pick them up. "This is our family's home, so it's impossible for us to live together with your parents." "Well," he said. The moment I relayed the conversation with his brother, a deep frown formed on Greg's forehead, and he raised his voice. "Are you belittling my parents?" I clearly stated that there's nowhere else for them to go. Overwhelmed by his angry words, I reflexively counted, "You say there's nowhere to go, but isn't your brother's house an option? Why not choose that?" However, Greg calmly yet firmly replied, "They can't go back there." To which I responded, "Then, they should find another place. This house was built by my parents." But Greg didn't listen and cut off the conversation midway, leaving the room. As he was leaving, he let slip, "You always emphasize it's your parents' house, but don't forget, it's also my home." His words were true. This house was undoubtedly a place for Greg as well. If I continued to insist it's solely my parents' house, it might make Greg uncomfortable. However, despite bringing up the subject of rent in the past, my parents have always refused to accept it. "You'll have to maintain this house on your own eventually," they said, insisting on saving the money instead. Remembering this, I feel strongly that now is the time to consider my mother's feelings first. How to convey and deal with this to prevent Greg's free actions from disturbing our family peace and get him to understand our position was a deep concern. When I was preoccupied with my concerns about Greg, my mother came back to the living room upstairs. She might have heard our exchange near the stairs. Then, my mother began to express her opinion to me. "If they have nowhere else to go, they can stay here until they find a place. Greg's parents are also your family," she said. "See, even your mother understands," Greg said confidently. I was irritated by his attitude but decided to accept my mother's suggestion. "But you have to look for a new place to live," I stressed to Greg. Okay, he replied ambiguously. I was not sure if they would truly look for a place to live, but I was determined to make sure they keep this promise. 3 days later, an unexpected phone call excited me. "Is that really true?" I exclaimed on the phone. Unable to give up on my father's discarded items, I had contacted a junk removal service to ask if they were stored. The call confirmed that my father's belongings were safely stored. I quickly hung up and contacted a storage company I had researched earlier. While my in-laws were staying at our house, I arranged to store my father's belongings at that warehouse. Before picking up the items, I went to my mother's bedroom on the first floor to share the good news, but she wasn't there. After searching every corner of the house and not finding her, I eventually went to the living room upstairs. Entering the room, my mother-in-law noticed me and smiled while intoxicated. "Oh, Wendy, what's up?" Her face was flushed with alcohol. Despite it still being daylight, she appeared to be intoxicated. "Are you going out?" Greg had come home from work and was relaxing in the living room, enjoying a drink while still in his work clothes. The usually tidy second-floor living room had been a mess these past few days. The table was cluttered with empty cans and leftover dishes. Although I've told my in-laws to use the third floor, they spent today on the second floor again. It seemed a promise to find a place to live was just empty words. They haven't even attempted to go out. I approached Greg, who was relaxing in the living room, and asked him to talk in the hallway. "Why don't your parents go up to the upper floor?" Greg simply replied, "Because their legs hurt. But the second floor is my family's living space, and my mom." I said, to which he retorted, "You want people with sore legs to climb the stairs? It would be better if your mother moved upstairs." Arguing with Greg is always difficult. In the brief exchange, I grew tired and shifted the topic to inquire about my mother's whereabouts. "What? She went to a net cafe?" I was surprised at Greg's answer. I couldn't agree with what Greg said. "Yeah, she said she's going out with friends." "Your mother is quite modern and youthful, isn't she? She's good with computers too. She might return by tonight." He praised my mother's youthfulness, but I couldn't imagine her going to a net cafe. It wasn't strange for my mother to use a computer, as that's a daily occurrence. However, I couldn't find a reason for her to specifically go to a net cafe. Then I realized that the computer my mother usually uses is a desktop located on the second floor. Since it's not a laptop, it can't be carried around. "Can't we really give the second floor room to my mom?" I implored Greg again. "The second floor has important family items for my mother and the computer she uses daily. There's no TV in the first floor bedroom to entertain her, and she must be at a loss for how to spend her time." Greg answered in an annoyed manner. "My parents are here because they have sore legs. Your mother understands, so there shouldn't be a problem." But I counted. "How can you say there's no problem? This is the Owen family's house. Why should my mom be displaced while your parents relax here?" Greg seemed unable to understand my feelings. "My mother went to the net cafe because she undoubtedly felt she had lost her place in this house. The excuse of going out with friends was likely just that, an excuse." I internally surmised that my mother said that out of consideration for Greg, but he seemed to take her words at face value. "You always think only of your own parents. My parents aren't familiar with this area. They can't easily meet their friends. Your mother has friends nearby, so it's good for her to go out during the day, or she can just go to the third floor," he shouted in anger. Facing Greg's unprecedented rage, I was at a loss for words and felt my feelings for him cooling rapidly. Even in the face of his anger, I remained surprisingly calm, realizing that living together with him was no longer possible. Unable to respond, I could only leave the house. Before going out to pick up the items, I visited the city hall. In the evening, I went to my mother's room on the first floor and handed her the key to the rented storage after her bath. "Keep this key for now and store things here when necessary. Eventually, we'll move Dad's items back to the storeroom," I told her. My mother listened quietly, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder in encouragement. "Wendy, you shouldn't mistreat his parents. I don't know when I'll leave this world, and after I'm gone, you'll only have them as family. You're not strong yourself, and you might need their support in the future," she said with a calm smile, but I could only shake my head. After my father's death, I was deeply disappointed in Greg's behavior, and my desire to sever ties with the inconsiderate in-laws grew stronger day by day. I took out a document I had received at the city hall from my bag and spoke with determination. "I'm considering a divorce." When I told this to my mother, she quietly, yet carefully, observed the divorce papers. After a few minutes of silence, my mother sighed and started a new conversation. "Your father never took a single penny from you two. What he wanted was for you to save for the future. But that wasn't the only reason." This was the first time I heard such a story. My mother whispered to me, careful not to let her voice leak outside the room. "After we're gone, we want you, who is physically weak, to be able to stand up to Greg on equal footing. It's best if you can get along, but life is unpredictable. Even if you were to divorce, we made sure this house would be yours. Having your own home means you can survive, right? You can manage with the government's support and your income." My mother smiled warmly, then her expression suddenly turned serious. "So, divorce, huh?" she said while picking up her smartphone. I had heard a faint vibrating sound since we were talking about the storage, and it grew louder when she held her phone. Looking at the screen, she tilted her head, observing the continuous notifications from the same social media app. As I tried to comprehend what was happening, my mother, looking pleased, said, "We've become a topic of conversation." A few days later, in the morning, I handed the divorce papers to Greg. "So, you want to divorce if things don't go your way? That's fine, let's divorce. But I'll sell this house," Greg declared, snatching the divorce papers from me. However, him selling this house is impossible because it's in my name. The house, initially in my mother's name, had been transferred to me, considering the future. If I hadn't married you, I could have had children. His insult no longer affected me, knowing the situation Greg would face. "Don't regret this," I told Greg calmly as he mishandled his things and sulked. "Huh?" Just then, the intercom rang. Knowing my mother was at the entrance, I didn't respond and left to do laundry. "Please come this way," I heard my mother's cheerful voice and the footsteps of several workers coming up from below. Greg must have gone down to the first floor to see what was happening. Soon, I heard Greg's frantic voice and my in-laws shouting. My mother had arranged for movers to transfer my in-laws' belongings to my brother-in-law's house. "What are you doing, Mother? Why are you doing this without asking?" My mother, as if waiting for this moment, cut off Greg's protest with a firm reply. "You did things your way, didn't you?" When Greg threw away my father's belongings, my mother, thinking about my future after she was gone, chose not to say anything. "If you're going to divorce, there's no need to endure anymore," my mother declared and decided to swiftly evict my in-laws from the house. While Greg tried to stop the movers, he received a call. "Huh? News?" On the phone, with his smartphone pressed to his ear, he hurriedly turned on the TV. The call seemed to be from a friend, judging by the conversation. The TV showed a morning program reporting news based on information from social media. "What? Is this about us?" Greg was shocked to see our house's photo on TV. I never imagined my mother had been venting her frustrations on social media. I remembered the night I talked about divorce a few days ago. We've become a topic of conversation. She showed me the screen of the app now featured on the TV. "My daughter's husband is causing trouble. We might lose our house." My mother's post, starting with this statement, garnered many likes and retweets, eventually attracting a major newspaper's request for an interview. Although my mother had no intention of giving an interview, she replied and cooperated when she learned of my decision to divorce. As I watched our house on TV, my mother whispered beside me, "Now Greg won't be able to stay here anymore." Her face was full of vitality. I watched Greg, who was panicking about the workplace finding out, with a cold gaze. The power of the media often exceeds expectations, spreading information rapidly and prompting people to investigate everything from the homeowner to the exact location. This wave of reporting could lead to unforeseen outcomes. Our family's experience is just one example. Later, photos of Greg, my in-laws, and our family were published online, bringing significant changes to our lives. He acted swiftly, submitting the divorce papers and leaving the house with his belongings. That might have been his way of resolving the situation. After his departure, our house finally regained peace after a long period of turmoil. My father's cherished items were safely returned to their original place in the storeroom. Now, my mother and I live quietly and peacefully. Of course, I consider the possibility of being alone in the future, but even then, I hope to cherish and protect this house, grateful for my parents. This house, inherited from my parents, is more than just a building. It holds memories, love, and family bonds. For me, this house is a precious place connecting the past and present, a symbol of hope for the future. That's why I feel it's my mission to care for and protect it.